Welcome to this tutorial brought to you by Gospel Beats, your source for music, tutorials, IT stuff, blogs. And this is your boy CYB, and in this tutorial, I'm going to talk about the AWS Certified Cloud Practitioner exam, my personal study guide I use to study for the exam. And I decided to continue to do these videos because it seemed to help a lot of people. So I'm breaking it down and I'm just focusing on the responsibility model. But this time I'm going to do a Q&A. And this Q&A is going to help you study. And just a little backdrop, I passed the exam a few years ago. So yeah, these are my study notes that I used to pass the exam. So I kind of have an idea of what's going to be on the exam. So with that being said, let's get right into it. All right, so whose responsibility for server-side encryption files and data? The customer. So the customer is responsible for your customer's encryption files and data on the server side. Okay, so whose responsibility for edge locations? AWS. So AWS is responsible for their edge locations where they have data centers and they store data and content. Whose responsibility for security in the cloud? Customer. The customer is responsible for the security in their own cloud. Who's responsible for global infrastructure? AWS. So AWS is responsible for their infrastructures, data centers globally across the globe. Whose responsibility for customer data? The customer. So the customer is responsible for their own customers' data, name, address, phone number, email, etc. Whose responsibility for network traffic protection? The customer. So the customer is responsible for their own network traffic protection or protecting their own traffic in and out their network. Whose responsibility for compute? AWS. So AWS is responsible for processing, computing data on their servers at their locations. They're responsible for processing data. Whose responsibility for platform applications, identity and access management? The customer. So the customer is responsible for their own platform, their own applications, and their own identity and access management configurations. Whose responsibility for storage? AWS. So AWS is responsible for storing your data. So when you upload your data to like a S3 bucket or something like that, AWS is responsible for securing and managing and storing that data. Whose responsibility for AWS databases? AWS. So AWS is responsible for their own databases they have located at their data centers. Whose responsibility for regions? AWS. So AWS is responsible for their own regions or locations of their data centers across regions. Whose responsibility for physical hardware? AWS. Again, Physical hardware, locations, infrastructure, things like that AWS is responsible for. Whose responsibility? Configuring, manage services. AWS. So AWS is responsible for their services they provide. So they manage different services within their platform and they're responsible for them. Whose responsibility for client-side data, encryption, and authentication? The customer. So the customer is responsible for their own client-side data, encryption, and authentication. Whose responsibility for natural disasters? AWS. So if a tornado or something like that was to happen near their data centers and destroy their data centers, or an earthquake or something, AWS is responsible. Whose responsibility? Network traffic protection. Customer. So the customer is responsible for their network traffic going in and out their network. They're responsible for the protection. Whose responsibility for availability zones? AWS. So AWS is responsible for their own availability zones where they have data centers located in different availability zones. That's AWS responsibility. And this is a summary or recap of what we just went over. So as you can see, this is the responsibility model, and you can see the customer responsibilities on the left and the AWS responsibilities on the right. Awesome. Quick video, straight to the point, help you kind of remember that responsibility model when you're trying to study and remember for the exam. I hope this helps. Leave a comment if you passed the test, or leave a comment if I made a mistake or I missed something. If you want to download this PowerPoint, eventually it should be on the Gospel Beats website for you to download. Thanks for watching. This is brought to you by Gospel Beats, your source for music, blogs, tutorials, and beyond. Until next time.